Hey everyone, Jennifer Lee Chan here from NBC Sports Bay Area. Thanks for tuning in as I'm back from Palm Beach, Florida, where every head coach, every GM, every owner was there, and to get to talk to a couple other coaches outside of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and Jed York. Talked to a few coaches. A lot of there was an AFC breakfast that happens on Monday morning at 7:45 in the morning, East Coast time. And then the NFC coaches talk on Tuesday at 7:45. What I'm hearing is that at some point that could change, but it generally has been AFC early, and then there's a reception Monday night, and then it opens up to NFC coaches, unfortunately, after the party, having to go so early in the morning. So hopefully that'll change at some point, but it's been NFC after the party for several years. Anyways, I know everybody has kind of spoken to how Kyle Shanahan looks a little um, tired, a little bit older. I mean, the picture comparison from when he first was hired as the 49ers head coach to what he looks like now is extremely different. Longer hair now, a little bit of silver in there. He does look a little bit older, a little bit more tired, but he's been through the ringer. I think two Super Bowl losses is challenging, and it's a third Super Bowl loss if you look at where he was previously when he was with the Atlanta Falcons. Um, it's been a tough road to hoe for Kyle Shanahan, and this year is not getting any easier with the tons of cuts that happened on the defensive side of the ball. Guys that they weren't able to bring back, and there's some on the offensive side as well. So on the defensive side, obviously, Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, huge ones in Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw. And, the list kind of goes on. On the offensive side, they lost Jalen Moore, who's a swing tackle. Aaron Banks and JP Mason, Jordan Mason. So, there's been a lot of an exodus of sorts from the 49ers, but the big thing is it's because they are going to sign Brock Purdy to a huge contract. I do think it gets done. I know there's a lot of speculation about where they are right now. They announced the offseason program dates as of today, and that is the first day of the offseason program is April 22nd. That is when everybody reports. They go through physicals. They start their conditioning, OTAs. That's off season, organized team activities. That doesn't start until the end of May. So it's May 27th, 28th, and 30th. And then there's three other dates, June 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. And then mandatory minicamp is June 10th and 11th. So that first day of April 22nd, that happens before the draft. So we'll see if Brock Purdy reports. I do think he does. I think, things are getting there. I think it's not going to be done, the contract extension with Brock Purdy, for a little while. This is kind of where things get a little touch and go. The 49ers have put out some numbers. Brock Purdy's agent will come back with a number, and the 49ers, respond. And I think they're relatively close on, the margin. They're not off by $15 million. The 49ers are not offering, $40 million a year, and, Brock Purdy's agents asking for 60. That is not the case. I think they're very close on what they are going to land on. It's just, those final moments and final numbers, I think, are where it gets touch and go. I mean, that's what happened. Nick Bosa, they were pretty close, but it was guaranteed money. I think, sometimes it's the number is this, but then how much is guaranteed? So I think all those details are going to kind of hold it up a little bit. I do think Brock Purdy shows up. I do think the team gets it done. Now, John Lynch was positive, and I know there's been some comments about it doesn't sound like you're saying they're close. I do think they're close in the margin, and I think that it will get done, but I think it's going to take some time. And I do think it's because Brock Purdy's agent is Kyle Strongen, and this is his first huge deal. So Kyle Strongen had Trevor Lawrence as a client. They parted ways. Trevor Lawrence got a huge payday. And so I would think, and I don't know this for sure, but if someone fired me, I would want to do a way better job at my next spot, right? So I would think to kind of preserve his ego, preserve his image. And, kids are coming out of high school and signing with agents. Some kids are signing before they're even out of high school. So for Kyle Strongen to have the visibility and the notoriety of a top flight agent, he's got to beat that Trevor Lawrence number. So I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. I don't know whether Brock Purdy will step in at some point and say, hey, let's just get a deal done. I want to be the leader of this team. I don't know that, but it is a possibility. You know, there is a possibility that Brock Purdy says, hey, let's just get it done. Where are we at? All right, I'll make a concession. Let's not do a little bit less here and do a little bit more here. I don't know, but I do think that they are close. I don't think it's close like they're going to get it done next week or before the offseason program begins, but I do think it will be done before week one. I think it'll be done before training camp. But I also think Brock Purdy is one of those guys who's going to show up. It's different when it's a wide receiver. It's different when it's an edge rusher. You know, it's different when it's a left tackle. I think it's harder when it's a guy like Christian McCaffrey, but he's also, yes, he's a leader of the team, but he's not the quarterback. I think when it's the quarterback and it's a guy like Brock Purdy, he shows up. And I don't think it's going to be a hold in situation. I think he'll participate. I think he'll do everything that needs to be done. I don't think he'll be out there, they're not going to be doing 11-11s at this point. So there's a low risk of him getting hurt or injured or having an issue at practice. I do think it gets done. I do think he shows up. And I think they're close in regards to the margin of money when you look at, from 0 to $60 million. I think they're close. I think that from what Jed York and Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch said, that, I mean, they were all very positive. It wasn't like how we heard them talk about Brandon Ayuk last year. They're last year they're like, well, we hope he gets done. We hope it's this, we hope it's that. It's not that this time. It's a different tone of voice. It's a different mood. I think they do get it done. It's just going to take a little bit of time. So, as I was saying, in regards to the meeting in Palm Beach, we did get to talk to a couple other coaches. And so a lot of us spoke to Sean Payton, head coach of the Denver Broncos, who now is the coach of not just DJ Jones, who came from the 49ers, but Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw. And he talked about how it was a really good get for them and that he probably had an advantage with the fact that Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw had dealt with injuries in the past. This is what Sean Payton said. He said, I would say we felt good coming out of it. He said, we felt like our team got better from a football makeup standpoint and toughness, and we'll continue to use that momentum as we get closer to the draft and even after the draft. So he was very complimentary of both Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. And this is what he said about them potentially being injured, or their injury history. So quite honestly, we would have had a much more difficult time signing them had there not been prior injuries. We felt that with those guys, that there's always that risk evaluation that's measured in, and we felt pretty good about it. We feel like in our program, we will be smart enough to understand their workload and all the things to try to get them healthy for the field. But there's always some risk with that. So the Denver Broncos took a risk. Now, I think it was kind of a mistake by the 49ers front office to not make a bigger push for Dre Greenlaw earlier. But it is what it is, and they're going to have to live with it. So Sean Payton is extremely happy. He said sometimes, a player getting signed there first, like Talanoa Hufanga signed first, and then Dre Greenlaw kind of signed afterwards. Was there a little help with Talanoa Hufanga saying, "Hey, come over, play with me"? He said it might have helped the negotiation process. He's like, I think that was a little bit more of a coincidence. There were positions that were kind of a must position for us, and to fill two of them with one team, I think that one may have helped the other. Said it's not, sometimes that can happen, but I can't speak for them. If there is a common thread, though, those two are tone setters in how they play. So, I mean, I think it's going to change the way the Broncos defense is, the tone. I mean, Talanoa Hufanga, when he was, when he started playing, when he got that starting position, he was flying around. He does have that Troy Polamalu kind of mindset. That's who his coach is during the offseason. And Dre Greenlaw, no holds barred. He just goes out and hits people and, doesn't, takes names later. So, they've got two great guys. Hopefully they stay healthy, and we'll see how that goes. But good get. Sean Payton was very pleased. I did ask Kyle Shanahan about Jake Brendel, and I know there's a lot of talk out there about how awful the 49ers offensive line is. But I looked up some numbers and, Kyle Shanahan was very positive about Jake Brendel. This is what he said. Shifting to the 49ers, obviously, after talking about the Broncos. This is what Kyle Shanahan said. I thought Jake played well. When you study centers throughout the league, you watch all these guys. I think Jake is right up there. When it comes to his pass protection, a lot of these guys get mismatched against and ahead of noses. So the D tackles they have to go against, I think Jake does protection as good as anyone in this league. And I think he's always been very good run player for us too. Kyle Shanahan, that's pretty complimentary. And I think what that signals is that the 49ers, again, are not going to go for a center early on. I don't think that's why they didn't go for Drew Dahlman. They believe that Jake Brendel is good enough for their system. I know a lot of people are not happy with that, but it is it is what it is. I think, they've gotten to two Super Bowls with offensive line that's, mid or a little bit better. They rank in like the in between 10 and 20 out of, a 32 team league. It's a pretty decent offensive line. When I looked at the PFF grades, he's ranked 19 in offense amongst all centers that played 800 snaps or more. So 19. There's 32 teams, a little bit below average. So he's ranked 19 in pass protection, but he's much higher. He's eighth in run blocking with a 71.6 grade. So he's eighth out of all tackles, or sorry, eight out of all centers that played 800 snaps or more. He allowed 26 overall pressures, one sack, three hits, and 22 hurries. It does put him for ninth most combined pressures, but allowing only one sack is second from the bottom. Like that is second best. There are a few guys that had not allowed any sacks, and there are about four or five guys that were tied for only one sack that were centers. So they did bring in Matt Hennessy at the end of December, and there was a lot of questions. I think Matt Barrows asked a question: is he going to be up, competing for the starting center position with Jake Brendel? And Kyle Shanahan said, no. I didn't really look at it going into it that Jake is competing. Shanahan said, Jake is playing at a pretty high level. I think while our O line has getting Hennessy there at the end of the year, I've always loved him at center. He's been a great guard. We do have an open spot with some open competition there at left guard because Aaron Banks is gone, but we'll see how that all plans out with that. So Jake is the starting center for the 49ers. So whether you are pro or anti Jake Brendel, that is what Kyle Shanahan said. I think there will be some competition throughout training camp, but I think really Jake Brendel, it's his job to lose. So as much as there is angst towards the offensive line and, Brock Purdy running around a lot in the backfield, this is what it's going to look like. And I think the way the 49ers see it is that if Christian McCaffrey is healthy, then that kind of gives the offensive line a little bit of break. So I think it opens things up. I think it changes the way the offense is run. And because Christian McCaffrey was not healthy much for the 2024 season, that's why the offensive line kind of took a hit in the ratings and what it looked like to the outside world. So um, that's it for today. And it is Thursday evening, and we'll do another one tomorrow, Friday. Um, I'll tell the story about, the timing with Kyle Juszczyk and why Mike Tomlin, I spoke to him, why he was interested in Kyle Juszczyk and why Pete Carroll was interested in Kyle Juszczyk. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And thanks for tuning in tonight. Please like, please subscribe, please tell your friends, please share. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. And I'll bring you more information as we get it. All right. Hope you guys have a great evening. Go Warriors.